The Monday after my grandson's engagement party, I called my attorney. Leland's name, I said. Remove it from everything, she paused. Everything? Edna? I looked at the window above my kitchen sink. Outside, a pair of cardinals were fighting over the same branch of my dogwood tree. Everything, I said. Start the process today. I should tell you what happened the Saturday before. My son and his wife had thrown an engagement party for their son, my grandson, Leland, at a rented event space in Scottsdale. Nice place, see ceilings, white tablecloths, the kind of flower arrangements that cost more than my first car. My son had sent me a printed invitation in the mail. That detail matters. Not a text, not a phone call. A printed invitation, like I was a distant cousin being notified out of obligation. I came anyway. I drove the 40 minutes myself. I still drive, I want you to know that, because people my age get underestimated about that too. And I parked in the lot and walked in carrying a card-sized envelope. Just an envelope, cream-colored, sealed. My name on the return corner in my own handwriting. Inside that envelope was a folded piece of paper with a routing number and an account number. That's all. 2 lines of numbers. Leland saw me come in and gave me a hug. A good hug. He's always been the kind of boy who hugs with both arms. His fiancée. I'll call her what she became to me that afternoon, which is the reason for everything that followed, was standing next to him in a dress that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget for the better part of a decade. Grandma Bev, Leland said, you remember Cassidy? Of course, I said, and I smiled, and Cassidy smiled back, the way a person smiles at a toll booth. Technically present, eyes somewhere else. The party went the way those parties go. Speeches, champagne, trays of small food you eat 3 of and still feel hungry. My son Terrence moved through the room like he was hosting a corporate event, which I suppose he was, in a way. His wife Patrice followed close to him the way she always has. She's not a bad woman. She just decided somewhere along the line that my presence in her home was something to be managed, not welcomed. And she has managed it very neatly for 22 years. I sat at a table near the window with Leland's grandmother on his father's side. A small woman named Roberta, who talked to me about her hip replacement for 40 minutes, and whose company I genuinely appreciated because she was the only person at that table who spoke to me like I was a full human being. When Leland and Cassidy made their way around the room, doing the proper engaged couple greeting rounds, they stopped at our table. Leland crouched down beside my chair the way he used to do when he was 7 and wanted to tell me something secret. Did you bring something for the gift table? He asked quietly. Not in a demanding way. Just the way you'd ask your grandmother if she needed help finding it. I have it right here, I said, and I pulled the envelope from my purse. He took it and smiled. I'll put it with the others. What I didn't know, what I found out later from Roberta of all people, who had a clear sightline to the gift table from where she was sitting, was that Cassidy intercepted the envelope before it ever made it to the table. She took it from Leland, looked at it, opened it right there, read the paper inside, and said something to Leland. Roberta couldn't hear what she said, but she saw Cassidy's face. I found out what she said when Leland came to find me 20 minutes later, just as I was putting on my jacket to leave. Grandma Bev. He said it in a low voice, not embarrassed exactly, uncomfortable. Cassidy was wondering. She says there's nothing in the envelope except some numbers? That's right, I said. He glanced back toward where Cassidy was standing with a group of her friends. She thought maybe you forgot to include a check or something. I didn't forget anything, I said. He looked at the floor for just a moment. She's saying, she mentioned it to her mom, and her mom said. He stopped. Tried again. Is it some kind of investment account? You'll find out what it is when you look it up, I said. And that was when Cassidy appeared. She had finished her conversation. She walked over with her champagne glass and that same toll booth smile, and she said, clear enough for Roberta to hear. Clear enough for the 2 women at the adjacent table to hear. Leland, honey, your grandmother gave you a piece of paper with numbers on it. Should we just… what is this actually? Is this a joke? Leland said. Cassidy, I'm not trying to be rude, she said. And she turned to me with an expression that told me she absolutely was. But we drove here from Phoenix and we've been planning this party for 3 months, and if this is your contribution, maybe next time you could just bring a dish. At least we could eat that. The table went quiet. I looked at her for a long moment. Not the toll booth version of looking, the real kind. I looked at her the way you look at something when you are deciding, calmly and with full certainty, that you are done. Then I looked at my grandson. He didn't say anything. He looked at the floor again. I picked up my purse, took the envelope back from where Leland still had it in his hand, and I said, "Enjoy your party," and I walked out. I want to pause here and tell you something about that envelope and about me, because you deserve to understand what Cassidy was laughing at. I am 71 years old. I grew up in Tucson, the youngest of 4, in a house where we turned the heat off at 9 p.m. and put on extra socks. My father worked at a sheet metal plant. My mother cleaned houses 3 days a week. Neither of them finished high school. I worked my first job at 14, bussing tables at a diner on Speedway Boulevard. I married young, divorced young, raised Terrence mostly on my own. I worked in hospital administration for 31 years. Not as a doctor, not as a director. I started as a file clerk and I worked my way to patient billing coordinator. And I was good at my job and I saved. That is the only secret I have. I saved. I drove used cars. I bought clothes at the end of season sales. I lived in the same 2-bedroom house I bought in 1989 for $74,000 and I never moved, even when the neighborhood got fashionable and people started offering me 4 times what I paid. I didn't move because I didn't need to. I was fine where I was. What I did instead for 30 years was invest, quietly, carefully, with the help of a financial advisor named Colette, who is sharper than anyone I have ever met, and who has been telling me for 15 years that I should enjoy more of my money, and who I have been cheerfully ignoring. The piece of paper in that envelope was a brokerage account, not a small one, the kind that has its own relationship manager, the kind where they send you a handwritten note at the holidays. I had decided to give it to Leland outright, as a wedding gift, as a start your life gift, as a here is everything I have been building since before your father was born gift. Cassidy called it a piece of paper. She was not entirely wrong. The Monday after the party, after I called my attorney, I called Colette. I need to restructure the beneficiary designations, I told her, and I want to talk about moving the Scottsdale property back into my name exclusively. The Scottsdale property, I should explain. 3 years ago, Terrence came to me with what he described as an opportunity. He and his business partner were developing a commercial property in North Scottsdale. Good location. Solid projections. He needed a co-investor for a portion of the purchase and he was looking within the family first. I wrote him a check for $340,000. I did not do it because I expected a return. I did it because he was my son and he asked me. The deed on the property had both our names, mine and his, and the arrangement was informal, the way family arrangements usually are, which I now understand was a mistake. When I told Colette I wanted my name removed from the arrangement and my investment formalized as a loan with documentation, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "How long have you been thinking about this?" "Since Saturday," as I said. She didn't ask what happened Saturday. Colette has known me for 15 years. She just said, "I'll have paperwork drafted by Wednesday." The calls started on Tuesday. First Terrence. "Mom, Leland told me what happened." "I don't know what Cassidy said, but I know what she said," I told him. "I was there. She didn't mean it the way it came out." "She meant exactly the way it came out," I said. That's the thing about moments like that, Terrence. People don't accidentally say those things. They say what they actually think, and the only accident is that they said it in front of the wrong person. He was quiet for a moment. "What are you going to do?" "I already did it," I said. "I called Gordon. Gordon is my attorney." The sound of his name made Terrence's voice change in a way I recognized, because I had raised him and I knew all his sounds. "Mom, I love you," I said. "We can talk more when you're ready to talk honestly. But I'm not going to argue about this." Then Patrice called. Then Leland called, twice, and I let both calls go to voicemail, because I wasn't ready to hear his voice yet without crying, and I didn't want to cry, not yet. The only call I returned that week was from my daughter-in-law's mother. She called me on Thursday. I almost didn't answer, because I didn't recognize the number, but something made me pick up. She introduced herself, Cassidy's mother, Nora, and she said, "Mrs. Webb, I want to apologize on behalf of my daughter. What she said to you was inexcusable, and I want you to know I told her that myself." I sat down at my kitchen table. "Thank you," I said. "She's embarrassed," Nora said. "But I also want to be honest with you. She's embarrassed because Leland told her what was in the account, what it was worth." She paused. "I raised her better than that. I don't know where some of those instincts came from." "I appreciate you calling," I said. "I genuinely do." "She'll want to apologize herself," Nora said. "Whether you're willing to hear it is your decision. I only wanted you to know that I didn't raise her to laugh at people." I thanked her again and we hung up. I sat at the table for a long time after that, thinking about mothers and daughters and the things we passed down without meaning to. The week after that, Gordon called me with news I hadn't expected. It turned out the commercial property deal Terrence had brought me into 3 years ago had some financial irregularities. Not on Terrence's end. He was as surprised as I was. His business partner, a man named Dale, had been underreporting revenues from the property's 2 commercial tenants and diverting money into a separate account. The kind of thing that comes out eventually, which it did, because one of the tenants filed a complaint with the state licensing board over a lease dispute, and the whole structure got examined. Because my name was on the deed, I was contacted by the investigator assigned to the case. I cooperated fully. I handed over everything. My original wire transfer records. My correspondence with Terrence about the arrangement. Every piece of paper I had. I wasn't worried, because I hadn't done anything wrong, and because 30 years in hospital billing teaches you to keep documentation. Dale was eventually charged with financial fraud. Terrence, once he understood what had actually been happening with his own business deal, was devastated. He's not a bad man, my son. He trusted the wrong person. That is a different thing from being the wrong person. What the situation did was force every informal arrangement into formal documentation. The $340,000 became a properly structured loan. The property was restructured entirely. And my name, going forward, is on nothing that isn't airtight. Colette had been telling me to formalize everything for years. I just needed the right moment to listen. Cassidy came to see me in person about 6 weeks after the engagement party. She drove herself. She arrived without Leland, which I respected. She sat at my kitchen table, and she didn't bring flowers or a gift or anything, which I respected more, because those things would have felt like a transaction, and this wasn't that. She was young. Younger than I forget Leland is. She's 26 years old, and she was sitting at my table looking at her own hands. And whatever I had been prepared to feel, what I actually felt was something closer to tired. "I'm sorry," she said. "I know you've heard that already, but I want to say it to your face." "Go ahead," I said. She looked up. "I grew up in a house where what you had it was everything. What you drove, where you went on vacation. My parents aren't wealthy, but they pretended to be for years, and it created this. I don't know. I learned to read people by what they had. I'm not saying that to excuse myself. I'm saying it because I want you to know I understand what I actually did. I looked at you and I made a decision about who you were based on nothing." I was quiet for a moment. "That envelope," I said, "was the most significant thing I have ever given another person. I decided to give it to Leland because I believed he would know what to do with it, not spend it, build with it, the same way I did." She nodded. "I don't know yet if I believe he still will," I said. "Part of that depends on whether the people around him are the kind of people who build or the kind of people who spend." She looked at me for a long time. "What can I do?" "You can start by not making that decision for me," I said. "I've already made it." She didn't ask what the decision was. That was the right instinct. Some things you wait to be told. Leland came the following weekend. He sat in the same chair Cassidy had sat in. He didn't apologize the way she did. Direct and uncomfortable and honest. He apologized the way young men sometimes do, which is sideways and around the edges. But at the end of it, he said something that was different. He said, "I should have said something at the party. When she said that to you. I should have said something right then." "Yes," I said. "You should have." I didn't know how. "I know that's not an excuse," he said. "I'm just telling you so. You know I know it wasn't." I thought about that. About 26 years of watching him grow up from the baby Terrence, brought to my house the first week, wrapped in a yellow blanket, already with that same expression he had sitting across from me now, trying to figure out what the right thing was. "The account is still in your name," I said. He looked up. "I had Gordon reverse the change," I said. "But I want you to understand something. That money is not for a wedding. It's not for a house in a neighborhood that impresses people. It's not for any of the things that Cassidy was thinking about when she looked at that envelope and decided it wasn't enough." "I understand," he said. "You don't yet," I said. "But you will. The understanding comes from working for a while and discovering what things actually cost. Not in dollars, in time." He nodded slowly. "Come back in a year," I said. "Tell me what you've built, not bought." "Built," he said he would. I believe him. Not completely, not yet, but enough to leave the door open, which is the only way a door does any good. I still live in the same house on the same street. The dogwood tree is in full bloom this time of year, and the cardinals are back, And every morning I have my coffee at the same table, where I have had it for 35 years. And I look out the same window and I think about what I have and what it cost. It cost time. It cost the kind of patience that doesn't come naturally to most people, including me. It cost a lot of Saturday mornings that could have been spent on trips I didn't take, in restaurants I didn't go to, on things I didn't buy. People like Cassidy, when they look at me, sees a woman who didn't have enough. That used to bother me. It doesn't anymore. Because I understand now that it's information. It tells me exactly who they are and what they think the world is made of. The world is not made of what you show. It's made of what you build quietly, over decades, in rooms nobody is watching, on mornings when nobody is looking, in accounts nobody knows exist until the moment you decide they do. I've spent my whole life in those rooms. They have been, without question, the best rooms I have ever been in.